Hello, my friends. We are at the end of March. We have finished the third month in the year 2026. First quarter, come and gone. And so it is high time for a monthly reading wrap up where we dive into the books that I read this month, my thoughts on them, and whether I would recommend them to you. In the month of March, I ended up reading 5 books, and I had some really good reads this month. My lowest book was 3 stars, which is pretty spectacular. And I had some pretty good favorites in there. First book that I completed this month was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I ended up rating this book 4.5 stars. This book is so fresh and so interesting. It is definitely very spooky and very like eerie and magical, and I love that. That's totally my vibe. And I thought that the magical system was really unique. The characters were all very unique. I thought the world building was really well done. And the way the book ended, I thought was so brilliant. I was literally like fiending, foaming at the mouth to get the second one. And I didn't get it until just recently. And I'm really loving it so far. But why did this get a 4.5 and not a 5 star? My main critique with this is that the relationship, the romance between Elspeth and Raven seemed very insta-lovey for me. And so it kind of lowered the stakes for me when from the beginning to of their meeting to the end, it's been like I think 2 weeks. It wasn't enough for me to like get taken out of the world or for me to like not care about the relationship and not be interested in it, but it just didn't make me feel, the things that happened at the end didn't hit as hard because I wasn't as invested in the relationship. Overall, would I recommend One Dark Window? 1,000%. The second book that I completed this month was an audiobook, and that was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. We ended up rating this book, my husband and I, 3.75 stars. I love Alice Feeney. This is my third book of hers that I've listened to on audiobook. And I think that she does a really good job of telling a story and going into all of the different layers of a story. I would consider her to be like the queen of twists and turns. However, this one wasn't as strong for me as the other books of hers that I've read. I felt like the twists were a little bit more predictable. I didn't have that jaw on the floor moment that I had in her other books that I've listened to. And I felt like the ending wrapped up maybe a little bit too ambiguously and a little bit too clean. And in that regard, I was a little bit disappointed, left wanting more. But in the end, like I said, I ended up rating it 3.75 stars. My husband and I had a pretty good time listening to it, and I would probably recommend it to someone if they're a fan of thrillers. The third book that I completed was First Time Caller by BK Borison. I ended up rating this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was extremely charming. I thought the relationship was really beautiful. I loved the way that it developed. Everything from the characters to the romance to the conflicts, it felt very organic and it felt really just, I guess, slice of life. And even the main conflict, technically, we had, I don't know if you would call it a third act breakup, but it just felt so real. And the resolution was so good. It was so beautiful. And I really loved the message this book had about what love is. Love is not a feeling, love is an action, love is a choice to be with someone through the good times and the bad. And we had really good examples of that. And for that reason, this was a 5 star read for me. I would absolutely recommend First Time Caller to anyone who wants a good, heartfelt romance. And I already have recommended it to all of my reader friends. Next book that I completed was Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. I ended up rating this book 3 stars. I feel like this book started out really intriguing and started out really strong, but I felt that as the story kind of progressed, my interest was flagging a little bit. And I think part of that is because there were so many POVs. And yes, I thought it was interesting that we had all these POVs because a lot of them would bring something to the table. Sometimes it just felt like it was overcomplicated and there was too much going on. It was hard for me to fix my eyes on one particular thing. I did think that the resolution was, I thought it was interesting, but it also kind of happened really fast. And what we see is that you think that the resolution is going to be one thing, but then it ends up being something completely different, which I don't mind as long as it's done well. And I just felt like it happened really fast. And then we moved on. Overall, I did enjoy like the creepy magical elements of it. I did enjoy the twists and turns, but it wasn't a standout for me. It was good. It was fine, but I did find myself when we got kind of towards the end just kind of wanting to move on to the next book. Like I said, rated this 3 stars. Would I recommend it? Maybe. It's a quick read. The chapters are pretty short, but it didn't snag me the way that I was hoping it would. And the final book that I completed this month was And Now Back to You. I keep saying that like a newscaster, by BK Borison. This is the second book in the Heartstring series, and it follows First Time Caller. I ended up rating this book 3.75 stars. To me, And Now Back to You was not as strong as First Time Caller. I didn't find the characters and the story as organic and as real and easy to connect with as I did in First Time Caller. I felt like what we fell into was a little bit more of tropification. I think we definitely had the trope of a manic pixie dream girl with Delilah, and that made it hard for me personally to connect with her until the last 100 pages or so. I feel like the conflict was very much kind of over the top, and the resolution from that conflict was very quickly done, which kind of made it feel like maybe the stakes hadn't been as high as they had been saying they were the whole time. And I felt like the relationship just kind of was thrown at us and didn't happen in the way where I felt these two people fall in love. I just kind of was told they were. There was a lot of depth. There were a lot of really interesting things we dove into. We dove into family dynamics with Jackson, who has an absentee mom and he has custody of his 2 younger sisters. We also had Delilah and her dealing with her grandfather, who is living with Alzheimer's, and the realities of that. And those things really touched me, specifically when we got more of Delilah and her grandpa. She felt more real and I was able to connect with her more. But unfortunately, I felt like we got that realness a little bit too little too late. And I wish we would have had it from the beginning, like I felt we did in First Time Caller. Like I said, I rated it 3.75 stars. It was still very charming. I still had a good time reading it. I did find myself kind of rolling my eyes a couple times, which knocked it down for me. But overall, I think I would probably recommend it. And I do look forward to reading the next book in the series when it comes out. So that is my month. We had some really good reads. I feel like having a lowest rated book of 3 stars is a pretty good month, right? There were no books that like actively made me mad, which is a definite positive. But I want to know from you guys, what was your favorite book that you read this month? What was your least favorite book that you read this month? And what are you most excited for in the month of April? If you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that. I hope April is going to be even better. I'm excited for more days sitting out in the sun and reading. And I'm excited for, hopefully, more great books. I'll talk to you guys later.